Welcome to the Daily Insider here on Vegas Insider. I am Kevin Rogers, and big day, Thursday, December 16th, 2021. We're going to talk college football bowls and NFL with Vince Akins coming up in just a few minutes. Of course, Urban Meyer fired from the Jacksonville Jaguars, so we'll hit on that as well. And look, a lot of COVID stuff that these teams are dealing with in all these leagues, in the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, even in college basketball a little bit. So it's going to be tough to navigate those waters, but we'll do the best we can with that. And we'll hit on the NBA for tonight with 4 games inside the league. We'll talk to Vince coming up in just a second. First, I want to say about BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. And for new players only, bet $10 to win $200 if your team scores a touchdown. Bet on any NFL money line. And if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Again, new players only, must be 21 years or older, eligible in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. All right, it's Thursday. That means Vince Akins joining the show. And Vince, before we get to the games, we have 2 bowls to hit on. We have a couple NFL games to hit on. We have Chiefs-Chargers tonight. We got to talk about the big story of the day. Urban Meyer out as head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, the last straw was the Josh Lambo story, the former kicker who alleges that Urban kicked him before a game. And Urban had a laundry list of things that went wrong. I'm surprised that, look, the owner of the Jags, I think, wanted to wait till the end of the season to see what would happen. You surprised they pulled the plug right now, or he couldn't overcome this?
Yeah, I mean, it really seemed like that they were going to wait it out the final 4 games of the season. But, I think that was just delaying the inevitable, and that came to this. Obviously no surprise that he was fired. It's just interesting seeing some of the things that gone on with the Jaguars this season. I don't think it's a great shock that this occurred. Personally, coming into this season, I thought that Trevor Lawrence might be able to overcome this a little bit more. Not that Urban Meyer was going to be some kind of genius NFL coach. But, just on, it's been a interesting human interest level story. And it's kind of interesting to think about some of the things I think go on in colleges and with these college coaches that you don't always hear about. Obviously, there's some, a lot of things that happened in Florida with Meyer started to come out later on before he took this Jacksonville job. But, I wonder how many college coaches really, act and are kind of personalities that the manner of Meyer are, that just, it's kept under the rug in these smaller college towns.
Now, you live in Ohio, and I'm sure you're around a lot of Ohio State people. What was the thought of him? Obviously did a lot for the Ohio State program, but as far as just from a personal standpoint, or just seeing him non-coach, did a lot of people like him, or they just tolerated him because he was helping the Buckeyes win?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. It's interesting with the Buckeyes; they had such a long track record of success there. And I think for the most part, I'm not in Columbus; it's a little bit of a different area. But the people liked Meyer here, but not necessarily as much as Jim Tressel. Interestingly, Jim Tressel, another local to Northeast Ohio here. So since they've had that kind of track record of success, and people like Ryan Day as well. People liked Meyer. They're happy with the on-field performance, but I don't think he necessarily resonated quite the same way that Jim Tressel did, interestingly, around here.
Now, one more question on this before we look at the games. That number is shooting up with Jacksonville on Sunday against Houston. Understandably, the Texans are not good, and this is a revenge game. Houston beat up Jacksonville in the first game of the season. That's getting up to 4.5, 5. I mean, are we doing this now that Jacksonville is going to be this motivated without Urban Meyer? This team still has 2 wins in the season.
Yeah, I was joking about when I saw he was fired last night. That the line's probably going to shoot up. On the other hand, I personally would be a little cautious on that, and I did not include that in the games we're going to talk about today. But they're just knowing, and not having researched this today, but knowing some of the long-term trends, I'd be cautious about laying those kind of points with a team as bad as Jacksonville is on the season.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And is it shocking if Jacksonville wins by a touchdown or more? No, but I don't know how much faith I have in that. Let's look ahead now, Vince, to tonight. This is a very interesting matchup here with the Chiefs and the Chargers out in L.A. for a couple of reasons. Number one, the Chiefs have been on fire. Their defense, which was ridiculed for the first 6-7 weeks, they were awful. They have been lights out over the past 6 games or so. The Chargers, they've been the Chargers. They've been up and down at times, but a win tonight, Vince, they have the tiebreaker, the season head-to-head tiebreaker on Kansas City. They'd be leading the AFC West with 3 weeks to go, which is crazy. But the Chiefs, though, a short favorite here, which they should be. Chargers a home dog for the first time this year. What trends do you have for this matchup?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. You mentioned the AFC West scenarios there. I know probably half the AFC is going to be rooting for the Chiefs in this game, figuring that the Chiefs are going to be in the playoffs, win or lose. Again, that's not secured, but you figure of these teams, the Chargers are the one that are more likely to be fighting for the wild card spot, though they will have the division lead if they take this game. So first off, you mentioned that early season meeting, the potential tiebreaker here with the Chargers beating Kansas City in week 3. So I thought it was interesting to look at, the Chiefs is a road favorite now, having lost at home to this team already this season. So I looked at that statistic going back to 2016. So recently, teams are 14-4 against the spread as road favorites of at least 3 points, facing a team they lost to in the first meeting, naturally at home. So on the road here is a favorite by at least a few points, coming off a home loss in the first meeting. Teams generally warrant that line the second time, 14-4 against the spread, going back 6 seasons now. And a couple of interesting team trends here. You mentioned Kansas City on a roll, Chargers on a smaller roll, back-to-back impressive performances. Starting with the Chiefs side, Kansas City's an impressive 13-0-1 against the spread. This one goes back to October 2013 on the road, coming off back-to-back wins by at least 7 points. So, the roll that the Chiefs have now won 4 straight games by double digits. So their roll extends even a little farther than that. Back-to-back 7+ point wins on the road. They've covered 13 straight games with a push in there as well. On the other side, the Chargers, back-to-back big wins over the Bengals and the Giants the past 2 weeks. Chargers 0-7 against the spread. This one goes back to December 2011. As a dog, coming off 2 straight wins where they've covered. So back-to-back wins straight up with covers as a dog, 0-7 against the spread.
You said last week, Vince, you talked about the Chiefs-Raiders game, and you gave us some trends fading the Raiders as far as them not playing well in that second meeting, and it showed. And Kansas City blew them out last week. That first trend, teams are 14-4 against the spread as road favorites since 2016 of at least 3 points facing a team they lost to the first meeting. So it kind of shows that those teams are going to be Kansas City, Green Bay, New England, going that far back, that yes, that they know the importance of this game, that they're not going to have a letdown.
Yeah, there's a reason the teams warrant the second line. And you talk about revenge spots. Sometimes revenge spots get overrated, but going on the road in a spot where you are expected to play well after a letting down at home. I didn't look at the lines, but most of those teams were home favorites the first time as well, losing that game. Teams tend to get up for those kind of games.
All right, let's look now at some of the bowl games before we get to the – actually, you know what? Here, we're going to talk about the Patriots-Colts, and we'll get to the bowl game since it's Saturday night. We'll stick with the NFL. All right, so you have this matchup Saturday night in Indianapolis, Vince, where, again, it's silly to say, but when the schedule came out, you're thinking, oh, this is a cute game, Patriots-Colts, end of the season, whatever. This is a major game now with the way New England's played, 7 straight wins. The Colts, they got off to that bad start. They're right in the wild card mix. And now this line is flipped where Patriots were laying 1. Now the Colts are laying 2.5. And Jonathan Taylor, he's having an MVP type season in the backfield for New England. Patriots been on a roll. What do you have with this game?
Yeah, so first off, I want to look at a couple of interesting situations the Patriots find themselves in here, and this is kind of what I like to call my myth busters. I used to publish an article every year and still do with some NFL situations that people will cite, and whether it's there's a worthwhile betting situation here or not. And here's a couple that actually aren't, but that you might hear about this week. So the Patriots, interesting situation. Road as they're underdogs here. They're on a 7-game winning streak, so. Looking at underdogs on at least a 6+ game winning streak in the regular season, 32-36 against the spread. So nothing too interesting there. No play on or no play against. You might think, okay, we're getting this team super hot, getting points. You might think, oh man, that's a play on value, or maybe Vegas knows more than You do, and that's a play against. Either way, there's not been a strong correlation there. With that 7-game winning streak for the Patriots, they've also covered in all 7 games, and that's getting into pretty rare elite territory. Teams that have covered in at least 7 straight games, historically 27 and 25 against the spread. So again, nothing too much there as far as historic value. You might think, that's due to end. They're going to be overvalued. A team that's covered in 7 straight games, Vegas is going to eventually buy back on that. Well, that really hasn't been the case. Those teams have been just slightly above 500 against the spread historically. So some couple interesting situations looking at the total here now in this game. The total of 45 there. First off, obviously, the most noteworthy thing about the Patriots last game before their bye there, just three passes in their win over the Bills. So looking at teams that have thrown 3 or fewer passes, you're not going to get too much of a sample size. But went back to 2008, teams that threw less than 15 passes in their last game. Those teams are just 4-13 over/under in their next game. So very run heavy the last game. They tend to have a little more run heavy game plans the next game, even more so than the totals account for. The Patriots here, they had that tough game that they pulled out in Buffalo. Last game now, another traveling to the Colts, another tough situation. So the Patriots are on the road for the 2nd straight game. This one goes back to November 2016. 1-13 over/under over that time. So 13 out of the 14 on their 2nd straight road games going back the last 5 years or so have gone under the total.
Yeah, and now you have no weather to worry about in the Dome in Indianapolis. So I'm going to assume that Bill Belichick is going to have Mac Jones throw the ball more than 3 times coming up this Saturday. But very intriguing game with those two. And again, New England right now in control of the AFC. I mean, who would have thought that'd be the case down the stretch? But very big game coming up Saturday night. Okay, let's look at some of the bowls on this weekend. Actually, I kind of skipped around a little bit because I forgot this was Friday, but whatever. Cure Bowl, Coastal Carolina, Northern Illinois, and Northern Illinois coming off a resounding win over Kent State in the MAC title game in Detroit. And now Northern Illinois is a heavy dog. Coastal Carolina, who fell short of the Sun Belt Championship game, they're laying 10.5. What do you have for the Cure Bowl on Friday night?
Yep. So, bowl season, you mentioned Gus getting the bowl season here. And, there's a lot of interesting information that can be generated for bowl-specific games. We're going to talk about a couple bowls here. Really love, I'm going to chill for just 1 second. I really love handicapping bowl season. Over 60% on Vegas Insider the last 5 years with bowl selections because there's a lot of valuable bowl-specific data. Those are unique matchups, and there's a unique skill sets of teams that tend to perform well in bowl games. So I'm going to mention one of those things here. That's a really nice system in this game. But starting with the first one, a little smaller one. And that's, you mentioned Northern Illinois, winning the MAC championship as an underdog in Kent State pretty handily, 41-23. The teams coming off a championship game win, upset win by at least 14 points, are just 3-10 against the spread historically in bowl games. That is active with that 18-point win in the MAC championship for Northern Illinois here. And now I want to talk about one of these real interesting bowl systems. So Northern Illinois comes into this really a poor run defense, allowing 215 yards per game on the ground. So in bowl games, and this goes back to bowl history of going back 2006 in total, both teams have allowed at least 180 rushing yards per game. So poor run defenses coming to bowl games, just 63 and 100 against the spread in bowls. So really poor against the spread performances. You think about long term. Just looking back the last 5 seasons, 24 and 45 against the spread. Those are poor run defenses in bowl games. So that's active in Northern Illinois. If you want to look that up, that's going to be active several more times this bowl season.
Also, another one too, Vince, that's coming up this weekend. The team's coming up a championship game upset win by at least, well, no, I don't think that's the case. I was going to say for Louisiana Lafayette, but they won by 10. I don't think they won by 14 against Appalachian State in their let me just double check. What was it? It was 8. It seemed like it was more than that, but regardless. But I do like that because, number one, with Coastal Carolina not being in the Sun Belt title game, again, it's motivation. That's the hardest part with these bowl games is to judge motivation. And Northern Illinois, off this win over Kent State, which they dominated, they went wire to wire in that game. You wonder, was that their title game for the season. And now you got to go play in another game against an unfamiliar opponent. So that's me kind of curious with some good numbers there. Now you have, Vince, the inaugural LA Bowl, the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl at SoFi Stadium. We need more bowls. We don't have enough. Oregon State, Utah State. Utah State, they won the Mountain West title, and they're playing Oregon State off the Civil War loss to Oregon. What do you have with this game?
Sure. Yeah. I look forward to the VegasInsider.com Bowl one day. I assume you're gonna fly me out there. It's gonna be wonderful. So
it's gonna take place probably Thanksgiving weekend, and it'll be in some parking lot somewhere, I'm sure.
What they should really like is sponsor. You should be able to sponsor the worst end of regular season games. Find that 2-10 versus 111 MAC matchup on Thanksgiving weekend.
It's going to float around. We're going to find it. We're going to dig deep for that one.
Mention this game, and so actually that first system that I just talked about, the championship game upset win by at least 14 plus points. Utah State in their championship game, what an upset that was! 46-13 as a 6-point underdog. So that is active, and actually that system's going to be active a third time down the line. Interestingly, Alabama here coming up in the playoffs. So maybe we'll talk about that in a future week here. However, so I wanted Utah State 7.5-point underdog. Utah State has really interesting splits based on their line that I wanted to point out for this game. This goes back 2017, so the last 5 seasons now. As an underdog of at least 7 points, Utah State just 3-13 against the spread, and that compares to all their other games over that same time frame as a favorite or a underdog of less than a touchdown. 28-12 against the spread in those games. So they're covering 70% of the other games, just 3-13 against the spread as an underdog of at least 7 points the last 5 years. They're getting just a little bit more than that in this bowl game.
Yeah, I'm really curious, too, about Oregon State simply because they had a good season. I mean, again, up and down. They lost 5 of 6 games away from Corvallis. So that's a little bit that's going to be interesting to see what they do in this game, which, again, is not in Corvallis. But, I mean, even look at some of the losses they had. I mean, losing to Oregon, fine, but losing to Colorado, to Cal. I mean, Washington State was up and down this year, but laying this kind of points against Utah State, you kind of wonder, is there a reason that Oregon State at 7-5 is a touchdown plus favorite against Utah State?
Yeah, and you look at their lines this year too. They did not lay points very often. I know they did against Stanford late in the year and a couple of those early season games, but they did not lay points like this much in season. Obviously, motivation's a big factor in these bowl games too. First bowl game in 8 seasons. You think the Beavers would be up for this one, but I'll be interested to see how this plays out.
And also, when you mentioned the Utah State is a 7.5-point dog or more, and their lack of success, lost by 14 to BYU, lost by 24 to Boise State in those situations. So, this year it shows that when they're a bigger dog, they don't perform as well. So we'll see how that goes coming up on Saturday. Let's go back to the NFL now. Titans and the Steelers Sunday, Vince, and Pittsburgh has had success as a home underdog this year. They beat Denver. They beat Baltimore. They dug themselves that huge hole against Minnesota last week. They came all the way back, almost had a chance to tie it at the end, but they couldn't complete the pass at the end. Tennessee had a get-right game against Jacksonville. I feel like a lot of teams have got get-right games against Jacksonville this year, but Tennessee is short favorite here against Pittsburgh. You still ride the Steelers as a home dog?
Yeah, I know I mentioned 2 weeks ago here going into that Baltimore game, their statistics as a home dog, so we'll do it again here. You mentioned the 2 outright wins this year. Going back to 2018, Pittsburgh's 5-0 against the spread as a home dog, winning 4 of those 5 games outright, and even a little farther than that, 9-2 against the spread going back to 2013. So not situations they found themselves in too often. It's more so the case this year. This will be the 3rd time they're playing as a home dog. Performed very well in these situations where Mike Tomlin gets the team ready to go. A team trend on the other side with the Titans. You mentioned the get-right game against Jacksonville very, very much was in a 20-0 game. Against the Jaguars, that was never particularly close. Tennessee controlled the ball for 36-57 of that game. The Titans, this one goes back to 2011, is a favorite past week 5 of the season, which makes sense when you see we're looking at season averages. After a game where they had at least 3 more minutes time of possession than their season-to-date average. So we let that establish past week 5 of the season. A game where they really controlled the ball, almost 37 minutes time possession last week, 0-13 against the spread as favorites in these games.
And again, for Mike Tomlin, where the schedule is really tough down the stretch for Pittsburgh. I don't think they're going to get first place in a division that's wide open right now. But also, I saw a really interesting stat that Pittsburgh hasn't finished in last place of their division since 1988. Like, that's a long – like, there's a lot going on for the Steelers here, even if they don't make the playoffs. And also, Tomlin's never had a losing record, so they really are going to be motivated here down the stretch. Now, the final game we're going to look at, Vince, another AFC North team at home as a dog – the Ravens facing the Packers, and we don't know Lamar Jackson's status day to day. His numbers really haven't been great the last 5 weeks regardless. The offense has taken a step back. Defense has still been decent, but the offense has been pretty pedestrian. Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, they keep rolling. They were down to Chicago, still covered as double-digit favorites. What do you got here with Green Bay and Baltimore?
Sure, and obviously Lamar Jackson's stats for this game is going to play a big factor in where this line goes. Even though he has not performed at MVP level this season, still a pretty good upgrade from Tyler Huntley there, though Huntley has played well in stretches this season when he's been in there. And, while we're just talking here, you mentioned Lamar stats. Yeah, I think this is maybe an important week to, constantly be checking COVID statuses, consider when you want to place your wagers for games based on the kind of value on the line and where, who knows how many more COVID positives there's going to be in the NFL. I know we know Jalen Waddle. It sounds like it's going to be out today. We're finding out dozens more each day, it seems like. So, considering, I mentioned this early in the week to some followers, if you like a heavy underdog, maybe now's the time to put that in because the line can only go one way depending on who's ruled out. But by Sunday, I think we're going to be ready to go with all these games, thankfully. Having said that, talking about the Ravens here, this is a stat I've mentioned before on this show, though not last week, because I actually like the Browns, and what a frustrating loss that was as 2.5-point favorites last week. But the Ravens, with that cover last week, now 13-0 against the spread, going back to November 2017, as regular season underdogs. This will be only the third time that they were home underdogs in that stretch, and actually the last time they were at least a 4-point home underdog goes all the way back to 2015. So the Ravens been really good as regular season underdogs. Obviously, last week's cover, maybe a bit fluky or not, but there have been some really good performances in there above 500 straight up as regular season home underdogs as well over that stretch. Another thing on the Ravens, looking for them playing a really good team. Obviously, the 10-3 Packers on the other side of the ball here. The last 3 seasons, Baltimore is 9-4 overall and 10-3 against the spread in the regular season against teams that have won at least 70% of their games coming in. So the Packers at 10-3. A bit interestingly with this trend, the only team that has performed better against the spread and one of the 2 teams to perform better straight up in this spot is the Packers, but that is not active with the Packers this week because Baltimore's below 700 on the season. You're not quite the same caliber of opponent. And finally, the last trend here, a mini one, just going back to last season, Baltimore in low total games of 44 or lower. You see the total currently at 43.5 here. Baltimore's covered in all 5 games they've played, going back to December of last season, where the total's been no more than 44.
What's the conversation, Vince? Because again, you're in Northern Ohio. What's the conversation with the Browns? And their game against the Raiders Saturday. All these guys test positive. Baker Mayfield among them. Even Kevin Stefanski, their head coach, tested positive. Is there a possibility Mayfield can play coming up on Saturday if he gets a couple of negative tests, or are all these guys not going to play?
Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to be too committal. I think the assumption is that he's not going to play unless something changes with the protocols. Unless there's been a false positive, which is made positive the Browns have, it doesn't seem like that's the case. I know NFL reporters cite this every time there's a positive test, but I don't, other than I know Tyler Higbee had a false positive last week, but unless that happens right away in the next day, I don't think otherwise we've seen anybody return the same week that they've had a positive test, unless it was immediate next day, false positive, 2 negatives right in a row. So having not heard that, I would assume everyone that was ruled out this week is going to be out. There's a couple of Browns that were on the COVID list last week, David Njoku, Anthony Walker. It seems like that they may be back. I've heard Njoku specifically. Hopefully, it's going to be back for that game. Giving the Browns some weapons, and considering the current state of their receiving core, even someone like Njoku could make a big difference in this game.
Would you back the Browns, getting him as a short dog, knowing all of this, that all these guys would be out, especially against the Raiders, who have been terrible recently?
Currently, I think this one's probably a stay away. With the current state of the Browns, I wouldn't necessarily be comfortable backing the Raiders as road favorites in this spot. But with the uncertainty, if with a different circumstance, I could definitely see value on the Browns here. But I think there's just a little too much uncertainty, even going up to game day, and the possibility that the Browns are going to have continued COVID positives. Hopefully, I haven't heard any today, and hopefully that's slowed down. But there's just a little too much uncertainty in this one for my liking there with the Browns and their health status.
Vince Akins, you could find him on Twitter, SB Breakers, and 2 Sundays ago was 10-0 in the NFL. He's had a very good NFL season. Check out his trends this weekend, gridiron angles. You could find that on Vegas Insider for week already 15 of the NFL. We're moving along. I mean, we're almost at the finish line. It can't come soon enough with all this COVID stuff. I mean, it's kind of crazy. But Vince, we appreciate the time as always, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Yep. Best of luck, everyone. We'll talk again next week.
All right, there is Vince Akins. Always enjoy talking to him. And a lot of good trends. Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh 5-0 ATS since 18 as a home dog. Ravens 13-0 against the spread since 2017 as a regular season underdog. That's insane. And big spot for John Harbaugh's team. That AFC North still wide open. It really is. Steelers' schedule very difficult down the stretch, so I don't think they can make a run. But the way the Bengals have played recently, they've lost a few in a row. Baltimore with the Lamar situation, Cleveland with their COVID issues. Who knows? I mean, honestly, at this point, it'll be really interesting to see who comes out of that and wins the AFC North. All right, DraftKings, you want to be the GOAT? Our friend, he wears the crown all the time. Can you be that person? DraftKings Championship Series. That is the ultimate competition of contest winners from daily fantasy sports, sportsbook, and casino. The one and only place you can compete in the king of competitions. The best of the best in each domain will compete for series supremacy in their own domain's tournament of champions. They'll have one goal in mind: win the ultimate crown and earn the title of the greatest of all time, the GOAT. That's right. You could be like our friend here. Wear that crown proudly. Score your seat to the tournament of champions. Check out DraftKings.com for more details. All right, couple NBA games we're going to look at tonight. Now, college basketball slate's terrible. I'm not going to mince words. It's pretty bad, so we're not going to go over it. But let's look at the NBA games. All right, first off, the Pacers hosting the Pistons in Indianapolis. And this is kind of too little too late, but I'll tell you anyway. So Indiana, they played on the front end of a back-to-back last night against Milwaukee without Giannis, without Chris Middleton, and the Pacers lost. That marks Indiana now 0-6 this season on the front end of a back-to-back. 0-6. So their next back-to-back set, I believe, is in early January. They play the Knicks. I think that's who it is. But it's either the Knicks or the Nets. But 0-6 their last or this year in the front end of a back-to-back. Now, on the back end of a back-to-back for Indiana, they're 5-0 to the under. So first time around these teams played, Detroit won at home as a dog against Indiana. Game stayed under, another under here. Pistons have not been good recently. Pacers have struggled. So good luck if you want to lay the 10.5. The Nets and the 76ers in Brooklyn tonight. And hopefully Joel Embiid plays if you want Philadelphia, because it's always a mystery to see if he'll play, especially on a back-to-back. Philadelphia lost to Miami last night. Brooklyn coming off of the overtime win 2 nights ago against Toronto. Kevin Durant had another big game, but James Harden the protocol, LaMarcus Aldridge in the protocol, Bruce Brown in the protocol, Paul Millsap in the protocol. You got a bunch of guys in the protocol for Brooklyn. So it's basically Kevin Durant, Patty Mills, and a couple other guys. That's what the Nets are throwing out. Now, Philadelphia, they're 0-5 this year inside the division, which is kind of odd. But they're 4-1-1 ATS their last 6 as a road underdog. Granted, it's not a lot of points they're laying, or they're getting, I should say, tonight. But Brooklyn did come back to beat Philadelphia first time around at Wells Fargo, at Wells Fargo. Tonight's at Barclays Center. So I'd lean Philly, but I feel better if I know Embiid's playing. Embiid played last night, but he was a late scratch against Memphis a few nights ago. Knicks and the Rockets in Houston. We need a drink for this one because Houston, who went on this great run, they're 9-19. They were 1-16 on the season. They ended up on that 7-game winning streak. They came back a few nights ago to win in Atlanta, 132-126. Then they threw up a real clunker last night, 124-89 loss at Cleveland. Just wire-to-wire blowout. Now, the Knicks, they're on the road after losing 7 of 8. Lost to Milwaukee at home, lost to Golden State at home, two teams that could be in the finals. And Steph Curry broke the record, the three-point record the other night. New York is 0-4 against the spread their last 4. As a road favorite last time they were in that role, they won at San Antonio convincingly. I would have faith in the Knicks tonight simply because Houston, let's see, Christian Wood was out last night. Eric Gordon was out. Jalen Green is still out. You don't have those guys in the lineup, forget it. I don't know how you score. They shot 38% from the floor. Cleveland shot 56%. Cavs were up 19 after 1. They were up 31 at the half. So Houston now, and the other situation they're in too, 3-game road trip they just finished up. They come home for 1. Now they're back on the road after this. They go to Detroit coming up on Saturday. Oh, God, what a clunker that's going to be. But New York, for as much as they've struggled offensively, Houston, not great defensively. You would think this would be a get-right game for Thibodeau and the Knicks, but again, we've been wrong on that in the past. Wizards and the Suns out in Phoenix, and the Suns, are they getting – there's no word yet. I don't think Devin Booker's coming back tonight. He still is not ready. But that number has jumped up to 9 at some places, 8.5 at BetMGM, and the total at 212.5, 213. Washington lost last night at Sacramento as a 2-point favorite. And the Wizards now back-to-back losses on this current road trip at Denver and at Sacramento. Phoenix won at Portland 2 nights ago in overtime. And the Suns at 22-5, still playing very well. Washington, good start to the season. They've kind of fallen back a little bit of late. Kyle Kuzma did come back from the COVID protocol list last night. Didn't shoot the ball great, but again, we shouldn't be surprised in these games in which these players come back, the first game back, that they don't play as well. I actually like Washington tonight. I think this could be a good look to take them against Phoenix. And look, Phoenix is 12-2 at home. They've been exceptional since that 1-3 start. What is that? 21-2 the last 23 games. Pretty impressive for the Suns. But I do lean towards Washington tonight. I like a few of the road teams. I like Washington. I like Philly. I like the Knicks. And the Knicks is just simply to fade the Rockets. Because the Rockets, with that kind of talent, the Knicks, here's one thing I'll say about the Knicks. Yeah, there's an issue with Kemba, why he can't get in, but you still have Julius Randle. He's the best player on the floor. The Knicks actually have a winning record on the road compared to home. For some reason, they haven't been good at the Garden this year. You're coming off 2 games against Milwaukee and Golden State, 2 of the best teams in the league. Now you're playing Houston. So I think there's a shot there for the Knicks to come back and win that game and cover tonight. And also you have the NFL game, which we discussed earlier with Vince Akins, the Chiefs and the Chargers. I do like LA tonight. And even though LA, if they win this game, they will have the tiebreaker over Kansas City. Major game for both these teams. For the Chiefs, they want to keep their winning streak going. For the Chargers, home dog. Herbert's got good numbers against the Chiefs. 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, 1 rushing touchdown. I just think LA is the look tonight. I really do. That number got up to 4, now back down to 3. Austin Eckler's supposed to play for the Chargers. Should be a pretty good atmosphere. I know the Chargers, they say don't have much of a home field. I don't know how much the Chiefs are really traveling for this Thursday night game, Chiefs fans. But I do like LA, and the road teams have done well. The road favorites, I should say, have done well on Thursday night games. Maybe not covering a lot. Some were bigger favorites than others. But I got to think one of these home dogs comes through for Thursday night football coming up tonight in LA at SoFi Stadium, the home of the LA Bowl, sponsored by Jimmy Kimmel. All right, BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. New players only. Bet $10 to win $200. If your team scores a touchdown, bet on any NFL money line, and if your team scores a touchdown, you'll receive an additional $200 in free bets. Again, for new players only. Must be 21 years or older to play, and legal in the following states: Arizona, New Jersey, Indiana, Colorado, Tennessee, West Virginia, Iowa, Virginia, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Washington, D.C. only. Full terms and conditions apply. That is BetMGM. They are the king of sports books. My thanks to Vince Akins for joining us today, always giving us the good trends around the NFL and also for some of the bowl games as well. And we'll talk to Vince next Thursday. We'll have plenty more bowl games to look at coming up next week. I am Kevin Rogers. Thanks a lot for tuning in to this edition of the Daily Insider. And we're back with you tomorrow to wrap up the week at noon Eastern. And as always, best of luck with your bets.